Okay, so it's something like, what if technological determinism is the best theory of reality? Well, then people like myself trying to help students design all kinds of clever things, and we are using our social engagement, and we are full of energy in creating these wonderful, clever new things. Well, if technological determinism is the best theory of reality, it doesn't really matter, or it doesn't really lead to anything in particular. We are just doing this as a consequence of the possibilities for doing so, actually. I'm not really saying this is the case. What I'm saying is that I'm exploring this possibility just to be on the safe side. It's like my intellectual obligation to double check. Let's not just go for this good old social constructivism or co-shaping just like that. So in that sense, it's not necessarily so that I mean my own argument here, but I certainly make it. Okay, that's the face reader, which shows that I'm relatively normal and boring in the face in this picture, and there's nothing really to report. But if we look at this face instead, he's really looking at you with serious eyes, and that's why I chose him to represent technological determinism. It's something like a mentality. We can all have this. We can get tired in the evening or something, and we just say, oh, it's going to happen anywhere. And people are also like aggressively determinist in many cases, saying that it's Facebook, it changes everything. My children, I cannot give them an education. I have no chance to keep up. But what I'm talking about is deliberate, intentional theories of technological determinism. And if I had more than 20 minutes, I can promise you, this would be a long lecture, because you have Karl Marx up there, you have Marshall McLuhan, you have Ray Kurzweil as one of the interesting newer figures, and there's a whole bunch of very interesting theoreticians who dared to sit there in their offices and claiming this monstrous thing. Martin Heidegger is just one of the absolutely most interesting theoreticians to do this. And it's this essay, The Question Concerning Technology, from 1954. So, it's impossible to give you a real lecture about Heidegger, I just know it, but if you shape your beautiful thing with your hands, you have this handicraft thing, and you're bringing forth the thing, and you are making a little nice, like mill, water mill, you can see it's shaped by these tiny humans. But then you have challenging forth. That's something else. That's the picture where you have the modern technology puts to nature the unreasonable demand that it supply energy which can be extracted and stored as such. Doesn't matter what you're going to use it for or anything, you're just going to store it. A tract of land is challenged in the hauling out of coal and ore. Literally, both challenged, destroyed, manipulated, whatever you want to call it. So, this is modern technology that we are talking about. We're not talking about the nice old handicraft things up in the cabin, but about big modern technology. That's basic. So, I would say then that technological determinism is something that would be very difficult to imagine in the year 1000 or in the year 0. But because of the success of physics as an exact science, it is very easy to imagine for our own time. And this is the core of Heidegger's argument as I interpret it. The modern science that allows for a continuous development of whatever you're dealing with, that it becomes more ordered, more structured, more connected, more points that can be connected with more other points, so that everything becomes more and more and more like a network of immediate contacts and possibilities. So you have the rocket, you have the server parks, you have the Large Hadron Collider. Doesn't matter what it is. It all works according to the same fundamental logic or systematic process. And it's accumulative. It's a historical accumulation, and you can really not see it if you're like this, nearsighted. There's no way you will see this development unless you allow yourself to look at it from a distance. And then this notion of of course, it has always been the role of technology to take over actions that humans had to do, but also introducing novel features at the same time. And if you look at it as this graph that I made myself, took me many years, exponential growth. And listen, now look at this. It's only from the beginning of radio in the 1920s. We could have done this from the Stone Age upward. It would be much more impressive because the the exponential structure would be much more visible. So I'm going to go into this now. This is my empirical evidence, which is going to be very quickly conducted, but smartphone, it's an Uber medium. Everything that I'm talking about fits into the smartphone, and we all have it. It's not something that's strange and inaccessible. Absolutely everybody has a smartphone, and that's where this feature is most strongly present also. So it orders our lives. We check our phone several times per minute. We touch this little thing 1,000 times every day. And it has all of this in it. So now I'm going to be careful about my timing, which some of you know that Heidegger was very concerned with. Being and time. So I will also be so. So well, let's go very quickly. Like radio, 1920s. Immediate access. A miracle in itself, really. And that you can experience the same thing in different places at the same time. And you could be millions of people doing so. Television. You add the visuals, but you also have tremendously big systems so that you can send these signals across the globe, literally, from globe to globe, because you had the moon landing, unless you believe that it's just a fake. And up in the mountains and everywhere. So in 1969, the planet was completely covered in electronic communication. And that's like 50 years ago, because that's my birth date. Internet, two-way. It's very simple in my regard. Yeah, you just have all these other things, but it now also goes two-way. And then we quickly move on. Mobile two-way. So that you can be anywhere within the grid, which is now more or less complete, because even my Heideggerian cabin far up in the Vossa mountains now has 4G. Yes. So the mobile is capable of receiving and sending any kind of message on your behalf. You're being tracked at every single level of your behavior or your activity, and it's just so commonplace. It's like we're not even bothered to have a slide about it. And now we can start talking. Are we now talking about the human or about the information? But anyway, it's geolocated. So at the very highest level of precision, you will now be geolocated, either for your own pleasure or for somebody else's. It's personalized. I'm saying, is it you that are personalized, or is it the information? So you have all these sensors in the phone. I know exactly how long I ran, and it's always slower than the previous time. Very annoying. But my music improves with every update. Predictive, that's a big topic. You can just imagine that along with these features, you also now have a high level of prediction. Like, I'm always being told it takes me 15 minutes to drive back home if I take this road, except that I'm not planning to go back home. But we get all this info all the time, and the last that I will point out, immersive. So if you add all of this together, you're sitting inside, or you're living inside this monstrous number of technological features that are hundreds of years old, that extend to everybody on the planet, more or less, and that can do so incredibly many things. And so my sort of question, in a sense, is, well, can we then control this? Can we say that this is co-shaped by humans? Only in the strictest of sense, where you, with your glasses you can notice that there are humans working with this thing. So in that sense it's true. But in some other senses, it's really not that credible. So now we're getting into my phase where I quote Heidegger at length. And I have, how much time? 5 minutes left. So anyway, we have to just have a quick look at the exponential graph. It sort of shows the ordering, because what Heidegger really says is that modern technology is ordering of nature. In a very strict sense, ordering nature. And that's what we see here. None of this would be possible unless there was this accumulation of ordering possibilities as well. Not just metal or wires, but also ordering structures. So there were artificial intelligence, quite obviously, is the very high level example of this feature. So Heidegger, he is talking more or less about the atomic bomb and about big power plants in Germany in the 1950s. But look what he says. Energy concealed in nature is unlocked. What is unlocked is transformed. What is transformed is stored up. What is stored up is in turn distributed. And what is distributed is switched about ever anew. Sounds like a poem almost, but like this is the information. It's just churning and churning around in itself, sort of. And that's exactly the purpose also of this phenomenon. Everything is ordered to stand by, to be immediately on hand, indeed to stand there just so that it may be on call for a further ordering. That's exactly what we're doing now, is my claim, my rather dramatic claim. So, communication for us has become a standing reserve of possibilities then, or I mean mobile phones in this case, a standing reserve of communication. This is not good, so the question is, what happens if technological determinism is the best theory of reality? Well, look at here. We have a supreme danger lurking. Sorry. So I have to quote this quite specifically. The supreme danger attests itself to us humans in two ways. As soon as what is unconcealed by modern technology no longer concerns man even as object, but exclusively as standing reserve, then he comes to the very brink of a precipitous fall. That is, he comes to the point where he himself will have to be taken as standing reserve. And this has actually been said by several lecturers earlier today in different diagrams, where Paul and you also had the same argument, but he formulated this in the 50s in a general form. And what he says really is that we are about to become, instead of the technology, something that helps us to control things, it clearly starts to look like it's the opposite way around. That we become, with our clicks, we provide energy for the system, let's say, for the modern technological ordering process. That as long as we give it more clicks, it will just continue to order everything. And then it needs artificial intelligence as well, and on it goes. So this is the first danger. We are becoming the product of the technology instead of producing it. The second danger, man, precisely as the one so threatened by becoming a standing reserve, exalts himself and postures as Lord of the earth. And in this way, the illusion comes to prevail that everything man encounters exists only insofar as it is his construct. Meaning, clearly, that we have made it. So we can take the blame, we can take the credit, we can do all the nuances in the technological sphere because it is our product, which is then clearly not Heidegger's argument at all. We are now inside the ordering process of modern technology that was somehow unleashed by modern science in the 16th century or thereabouts. And this process just keeps going and will lead us to various interesting places where I guess most of us would say, like good old Alfred E. Neumann, that, what? Me worry? So that was my presentation, actually. It's like, if technological determinism is the best theory of society, and we're really discovering it more or less nowadays, taking this seriously, well, then we have a problem. That's my message. if there are any Heidegger experts in the room, they should leave, because then I would be in big trouble.
Thank you very much for a super interesting presentation. I recently read an article about Nick Broström at the Future of Humanities Institute at University of Oxford, who's quite famous for making like doomsday predictions based on science. And his latest prediction was something along the lines of basically one of the problems I see arising of this technological determinism, that eventually humankind will develop a super AI so big that it'll take over the world, or before that biohacking probably will result in some sort of biochemical weapons, basically meaning that everyone has a mass destruction weapon in their pocket. And he suggests that the only way of overcoming this problem is by developing a big brother state, very Orwellistic, right? Having an ultimate panopticon, so we're all under surveillance all the time, to make sure that it doesn't go that far. Do you see this as the only option out? Is there...
Well, I'm more of the romantic here, and like breaking the machines is another option. It's very cumbersome, it would take a long time, and people would not really like to do so. But instead of just creating an even more clever modern technological system that sort of had self-reflection maybe in order to counteract some of these features, it would actually be much better to get rid of some of this technology. For us, I mean, not for the system, that we believe it would be better off with us behaving as the system wants, but for us as humans, it would actually be much better to just, I don't know, grow some oranges and apples and try to read a book. I know this is just foolish, because there's no way it would happen. Absolutely no way.
Replying kind of to that, if we have the time, we have this whole problem of the environment, blah, 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 right? Now it's the problem of the individuals. We have to stop eating meat and stop flying around because no bigger companies take responsibility. Translated now to your scenario, is it then the role of the individual to destroy their smartphones? Or is it something that has to come from up higher?
Well, maybe we should have had a Heidegger expert here, because that's a very deep question. And the reason he is not actually a determinist is that he says we can always question this process. It's the question concerning technology, but it also is questioning technology. So he is a classical humanist in that sense. What we can do anyway is start and continue to ask critical questions, finger with this and try to figure out if there are other solutions that are better. But I think that we are so deep into this now that much of it would be pure romanticism if we started to imagine that we could stop using technology. That's not where the solution lies. So maybe there is no solution. That's another possibility.
Can it be like this, that it's only our generation that's worried about this? Those born today will never experience privacy as we did when we grew up. So their whole consciousness is different. And maybe they will appreciate what they are born into and not question it at all, but welcome it.
Maybe so. I'm not sure that's a good thing, because if you look at this graph one more time, it's not like you can choose this just because you're young. You can have a new spring, a new chance because you are a young person. The technological grid is there anyway, and we will behave youngly or oldly inside of it. So I'm not too sure. Maybe you will be sort of, massaged so much that you don't feel it as an invasion of your privacy, so that you will, emotionally speaking, have a very good and harmonious life. But just a little bit of something happening to the system might then also be very dramatic for your own life, just because you are residing so comfortably inside it. So I think it's a real dilemma, difficult to solve. Yes, that's also.
Is this on? Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to ask, what if the problem is, just capitalism?
Well, if I'm wrapping on this argument from Heidegger, it doesn't matter as long as this technological grid is so pervasive and is so total. It doesn't really matter where it comes from or where it goes, because it is fundamentally material, and the communists have it also. So I'm not too sure about that. Of course, it can be explained partly as having become shaped by capitalism, but still.
Thank you for a very fascinating presentation. You could also argue that the concept of technological determinism has made it easy for us social scientists to avoid some difficult questions, although the really big studies, sociological studies, take the concept of technological determinism being implicit, so to say. Marx, for example.
Yeah.
One thing which could be useful here is to think not about technological determinism, but to think about the infrastructure, including the social infrastructure, which technology present us for, and which we produce, reproduce, and new produce. I think that's a bit in line with your argument, but my argument is that we should get rid of the concept of technological determinism because it doesn't take us anywhere.
Well, I could agree, except what if you believe that it's actually the best theory of reality? Then it doesn't help that you would like to get rid of it because it turns out to be true.
Could I just comment on that? I mean, that takes away the social factor in this, which has been presented here, for example. I mean, yeah, thank you.
It does, and so it is not as useful for sociologists as for other fields maybe, because they would not really like to take away the social from explanations. So that's part of the tension of this topic, I think.
Just a very short question, or rather an observation. Is it possible that having been, seen sex robots, seen all this thing about safety, maybe this is sort of like psychological basic needs of human beings. Maybe human beings develop technology to fit our basic needs.
Yes. Well, we could talk a long time about that. As in the handicraft culture, that would be obvious. You would have these wonderful solutions that will help you not be cold or to have your grain quickly produced compared to heavy work. But in our time, it doesn't really have the same ring to it. It's like, do we need a super big cabin ship off the shore to look at waves? Or, I mean, there are so many things that it's quite clearly not something we really need and that we had to struggle to create with our bodies or anything like that. Well, but my role today was to be the determinist, and I'm determined to keep being so. Yes. Okay.